This month's meeting is no different. It features a presentation on the Bella Vista Radio Club EmComm program launch by Chris Ebert, NA0D. He's the Emergency Committee Chair, and he has held several EmComm positions and has a passion for all things EmComm. Chris is an extra-class ham radio guy, weather spotter, and all-around techno geek. He is the founder of the Arkansas GMRS Repeater Group and also Director of Operations and Engineering at KNWA. This committee is a critical club and Northwest Arkansas community need. You know, when we get the applications for membership, we have several boxes that people can check. And what's your interest in amateur radio? And that EmComm box is checked about 80% of the time or more. So this is a great need of our area, but also a great need of our membership. They want to be involved. They want to be involved in EmComm. And so this is a very timely and necessary presentation. And so I'm going to stop talking and I present Chris. Chris, thanks for being willing to join us.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. All right. Let's see if the techno geek can figure out how to use the controller. So realistically, he's right. My name is Chris Ebert, NA0D. I live in West Fork. We just moved up here from Mena a few months ago. Got a job working at KNWA. So I get to play with the radios all day and transmitters. I've also recently just been asked to be and accepted the Assistant Section Emergency Coordinator for the northwest part of the state. So there's 9 counties that we cover now, where I'm going to cover. So this is critically important for us here. Do I have to stand here or can I walk? All right, good. All right. So what is EmComm? All it is, realistically, is the practice of providing communication service, right? During an emergency response, especially in a situation where traditional communication modes may not be available, all right? The communications can be overwhelmed, they can be completely gone. A tornado comes in, blows down a tower, and nobody can talk in a certain area. Well, there's where EmComm can happen. Communications can be passed for one or multiple agencies, served agencies, other agencies, and participants are not first responders. We're not doing first response. This is something that we're going to be communicators, and we're going to use our skills and our radios to communicate for the first responders, for the served agencies. And I'll get into served agencies in here in a little bit. It requires awareness, training, and a commitment. You'll see that word commitment quite a few times. You need to make sure that you're an asset to yourself, your team, and to the situation as a whole. That vehicle is one that we used in Arizona for Yavapai County Aries races. Just so you know, the county actually purchased that rig for the EmComm group that works there. The sky is the limit when it comes to this stuff. So, and that was a lot of fun to operate, and I got a story I'll tell you in a little bit. So let's do a quick test. Is it EmComm or is it public service? Got a gathering a group of hams to monitor and provide communications for a bike race. EmComm or public service? Public service. Public service, okay. Checkpoint teams relaying times or race numbers back to organizers. Public service or EmComm? Public service. One of the hams riding in a SAG car, which those of you who haven't seen any of this before, it's a support and gear. So they'll send vehicles around that has people in it, hams. I think you did one a couple weeks ago where you're just kind of helping out. We're relaying messages back to net control that they've picked up a rider who can't stay awake. EmComm or public service? Public service. It's EmComm. Really? It's an emergency now. All right, and they might be like, you can't stay awake, I need an ambulance. Now it becomes an emergency. Aid stations needing stock of first aid supplies, EmComm or public service? Could be either or, depends on what the problem is. A cyclist is hit by a car, is unconscious, and needs immediate medical care. EmComm or public service? EmComm. Are you prepared? So here's a SAG car. This guy goes a little over the top, but there's a fine line between public service and EmComm. All right, it can literally change like that. A bike race in Arizona we were running some years ago. I was the net control for it. It's a huge, and you have a Pike County, which is like where Sedona and Cottonwood and all, just south of Flagstaff. A huge going around and around. Lady was riding her bike. She's well within the course, doing what she's supposed to do, and a man come through the barriers, hit her, sent her 20 feet in the air, and killed her.
In a car?
In a car. He right through the intersection and killed this woman. And of course, there's people hollering all over the radio. And you know, fortunately for me, it was stressful. I don't care. You know, I spent 18 years in the fire service. I was a paramedic, firefighter. I was an assistant fire chief. I was a police dispatcher. I've spent most of my career in my life in some sort of public safety mode, and it shocked me. And we had to get everybody under control. We had to get a little bit things, and we got her medevaced, and unfortunately she didn't make it. But the communications amongst the team, the SAG cars, the people at the check station, and the people coming with the first aid personnel, everybody stayed cool, everybody stayed calm, and we got it done. And we had a race to manage. So we got her taken care of, we worked on it, and we started moving on to the next thing. So any situation has the capability of rapidly changing. You got to be prepared for it. And this is kind of as we're going to dig into this. And again, as some of you see this might be old hat to some of you. Some of you, this is the first time you're seeing this. And I think the idea of this presentation in general is to kind of get everybody back to the same page. So emergency communication, and apparently at my 2 o'clock in the morning editing, it looked good before. This is what happens when you work for a TV station. You have to work late and you still got things to do. All right, so amateur radio has been providing communications almost as long as it's been a service. I'm going to say it's probably been doing it as long as it's been a service. The tragic sinking of the Titanic actually had something to do with it. So some of you know, long story short, Titanic, CQB, SOS, Titanic, they're sending it, and ham radio operators were sharing those messages and listening in on those and trying to relay things back and forth to some of the news agencies. So there was, and always has been, an amateur radio operator somewhere that has provided an assistance. And if I'm in any of your way, I apologize. But the ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service, and its predecessor, the Amateur Radio Emergency Corps, organized to give emergency communications since the 1930s through the American Radio Relay League. So ARES and RACES are two separate things. Ham radio was actually officially recognized as an emergency service by the government after World War II. I think it was 1952, if I remember correctly, and was the birth of RACES, which is the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. They're two different entities, but they're going to provide emergency communications via amateur radio. Many are intertwined for interoperability, and another word we'll talk about in a little bit. So ARES is Amateur Radio Emergency Service, which is hosted through the ARRL. Each state or region is hosted, it's called a section. So the Arkansas section has Jamro, who was here some months ago, as the section emergency coordinator. I am his Northwest assistant, so he's got several regions that he's got assistants in. And then from there, we go to district emergency coordinators, which is probably a multi-county area, and then down to emergency coordinators, which is usually one county or one specific area. ECs, or emergency coordinators, work at the local level with clubs, kind of like ours, volunteers, city, county officials, and served agencies. They serve as the point of contact, the POC. Members do not have to be ARRL members, although if you get assigned to an officer, I hate to say officer, but if you get assigned to a position like SEC or EC or things like that, you do have to be a member. But you should be a member of the ARRL. I am a big fan of it, always have been. Somebody has to talk for us. RACES is the other group. It's administered and activated through local and state governments as far as Part 97 rules. It's actually authorized in Part 97 rules, which governs us. It's organized how the state or the government agency sees fit to appoint. These groups the county runs them. The county says you can only activate this way. We have to give you the permission. You have to access this. Emergency managers usually require you to be 18 years old, have a background check, and specific training. And activation can only occur through those government agencies when requested, and you have limited autonomous operations. It's not a bad thing. So what I'm used to in my ham radio existence is we do both. You do a little Aries, you do a little RACES. So when RACES isn't really working, we can do some Aries stuff. That's where the Skywarn weather spotting comes into play. That's where working for the Red Cross, Salvation Army, any of these other agencies, that's where the Aries fits in. The RACES fits in with the local governments, fire departments, police departments, ambulance services, things like that. 2 titles, 1 mission. And quite frankly, it just works when it's employed correctly. So you probably can't read that, but there's an awful lot of people that we can serve as in EmComm. You're going to get local, county, state, government, police departments, government agencies, fire departments, county emergency management, state emergency management, hospitals. That's a good portion of it. But then you're going to move into stuff like the Skywarn groups, National Weather Service. You're going to go to the FEMA agency, Homeland Security. There are Aries groups, RACES groups that work at the federal level. They exist. Then you have these things called VOADs, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. If you ever go on the internet and you look up VOAD, there's probably 200 listings in there of all these agencies and groups that activate in some sort of disaster. They're church-based groups. It's the Red Cross and its affiliates. It's the Salvation Army, et cetera, et cetera. There's literally hundreds of them. And some require help, some don't. One of our missions, I guess, for lack of a better term, is to go talk to the Salvation Army and the Red Cross. They always need help. Now, sometimes they have Saturn, they have their own EmComm groups, but a lot of they still use the Aries RACES groups. They still use the EmComm groups. And with that comes more opportunities for us to work. And then there's always others, Aries, RACES, EmComm groups, the Hurricane Watch Net, and more. The list is exhaustive. There's private groups, there's public groups. You have to be able to work with everybody and anybody. If 50 of us are sitting in this room, and 50 of us aren't going to be in EmComm, maybe 20 might be interested in it. Of that 20, 10 are actually going to do the training. Of that 10 that actually do the training, 6 are going to be interested and 3 are going to show up. There is not enough of us sometimes to get the job done. Aries, RACES, EmComm isn't for everybody, and that's perfectly fine. You can do it there's different levels that you can participate in. It's not, oh my God, we're going to go out and we're going to talk about all this stuff on the radio and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I want to be in bed. Yeah, it could happen, but there's different roles. So as we go through these, you're going to realize, what your role is going to be, what you think your role might be, and you think you might want to do something and it kind of gravitates into something else. Somebody we're talking in the new, with some of the new hams that were in here. And there was a comment which I really enjoyed. Don't let a 2-meter repeater HT define your ham radio career. There is so much stuff to do in ham radio. It's nonstop. And when you get bored of it, there's 18 more things to do. And then you can go do that, and you can do that. Me, personally, this is where my ham radio love has always been, is in emergency communications. Trying to get the most bang for the buck. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but what this means is the incident organization. A few of you, I imagine, have been firefighters, police officers, you know, things like that. You've spent some time in the service. 9/11 happened on 9/11, right? And things kind of started to change after that. You would have a police department here and a police department here, a fire department here and a fire department here, and they'd all have their own codes. They'd all have their own ways of doing stuff. If I said I had, you know, I have 10-2, 10-2 means I'm good here, 10-2 means you need to come back to the station here. It's confusing. You have these 10, you know, 100 different 10 codes, and then we started going into the 10-101s. And there's just all this coded talk. 9/11 happens. And, you know, unfortunately, a large amount of people lost their lives that day. There was somewhat of a collapse of incident command structure for a brief moment. And it was because of the lack of communication. There was a big repeater for the Manhattan area right on that tower. Down it comes. It never happened. Anything like that ever happened before. As a firefighter at the time, me and some guys are standing there watching the TV, just absolutely our mouths hanging the floor. That fire department, New York City Fire Department, to me did the best. They not only got through it, they kept it going, and they got the job done. But it came at a cost for the rest of us. And what that was, we needed to fix it. We needed to fix the way we were talking to each other. We needed to be able to be interoperable. So thus the National Incident Management System, or NIMS, was born. All right, so it guides all governments, all non-governments, all private sectors to operate as best as possible the exact same way, with similar terminology, similar ways of doing stuff. All right, it provides stakeholders across the whole community with shared vocabulary, systems, and processes to successfully deliver the capabilities described in the National Preparedness System. This was a great idea. There are some people that, you know, it's like, oh, I don't want to change, I don't like to do it. But now, even today, I've been retired out of the fire service a few years, so I still talk to a lot of guys, I still pay attention, I still do my EmComm thing. But I could go still talk to people, and a lot of that lingo is still the same. They may have new ways of doing stuff. There's always new ways. You're always trying to progress. But the fact of the matter is, we're all on the same page. So what does that mean for us? Ham radio is auxiliary communications and is often in some areas called EmComm. All right, ham operators that participate in NIMS ICS, which is what we were just talking about, are becoming EmComm trained across the United States. I was fortunate to be part of the first EmComm class offered in the state of Arizona back some years ago. It was a lot of fun. It was developed by CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, in 2009, using the actual input of ham operators. Ham operators were involved in creating this setup. And some states, I think it's Colorado, Arizona, soon to be Arkansas if we haven't got that far already, and some other ones actually recognize it in the communication structure of their states. So EmComm hits a flow chart, which I'll show you in a minute, and we as ham operators will fit in that flow. EmComm training is coming here to Northwest Arkansas. We are going to do it up here. I've spoken to Jay Moreau, I've spoken to a few other people, and I'm kind of hoping that we can host one of these classes sooner than later for those that are interested in participating in it. It is a lot of fun. There is a lot to learn in a short period of time, but you do it together, and there's a lot of teamwork involved with it. So, oh look. So this is the flow chart. This is me watching a barn burn down back some years ago. I wasn't watching it burn down intentionally, we were trying to put it out. So this is that flow chart we were talking about, and this is where the incident command structure comes in. What it does is it gives you a flow of everything that works on a fire scene, a medical scene, some sort of large operation. And to function alongside today's public safety, government, and VOADs, amateur radio EmComm operators will need to be trained in the terminology, operations, and flow of major incidents. I said we weren't first responders, right? When we're not. We're going to be asked after the fact. We're going to be asked later to go do something. We're going to be asked, all right, we're all here. The radio's not working. I really need you guys to send a couple people out so I can relay some messages between here and the hospital. All right. Grab our gear, hit in the car, go down to the scene. We meet with the incident commander because we know what an incident commander is. We know what a command post looks like because we have trained. He knows it. Do they have green lights here for the command post? They do that here? Yeah. So sometimes there will be some sort of indicator. Some areas, when there's a large incident, all the emergency vehicles are supposed to shut their lights off except for the incident commander. Sometimes you can't do that. So what they'll do is they'll put a green light in other areas. So what you do is you take these classes and you learn what is the operation here and what do we do here to function correctly. As hams, we're probably going to fit in here in the logistics sector. It depends, but that's kind of where we're going to be supplying something to them, and it's going to be emergency communications. They may stick us up here where we talk to the boss. The beauty of this, 5 fire departments, 5 police departments, 5 ambulances, doesn't matter, are going to show up. There's one boss. If there's 3 bosses there, they're going to unify. They're going to have something called a unified command structure. They're going to work together. All right? And the idea is to get this scene, to get this fire put out. If I remember correctly with this picture, I had just gotten there and I was actually sizing something up. And yeah, it's burning. So it was burning pretty good. So here's me running I think that was the same fire. And I'm talking to, this is a guy named Jamie. I miss this man very much. He was from an adjacent department just next to us. And obviously we got a big fire and coming up, and what we're doing is I'm filling him in on what we're doing. Actually, I think I was telling him a joke about horses. We call them fire, he is a ranch, and I think I was telling him a joke in this picture. It looks official, so we left it in there. But actually what he was doing was he was coming to give me his tags. So I could give him an assignment. We knew between the two of us, 2 men, 2 different departments, 2 different towns, but we knew exactly the same thing, and we knew exactly what we were going to do. And we got the job done and got it put out because of training. So this picture here will tell you there's 4 basic classes, and there's more, but there's 4 basic classes that you as an EmComm person are going to be asked at one point or another to try and take. And don't worry, if you can't write this down, anybody who wants a copy of this PowerPoint, we'll give it to. I'll give it to the club, and you can have it in here because there is some links. But they want you to get an introduction to the incident command system. How does this work? What does this mean? This right here is a whole day class that I can do for you. So there's, as easy as it is, this splits off into 15 different things. This splits off into 20 different things. This splits off, and I don't even want to go there. There's a lot going on here, but you know what that means. So that's your basic introduction to the incident command system. IS-200 is the basic incident command system for emergency response. So you're going to take those fundamentals and you're going to learn here how to employ them. How do they get employed? So there's IS-100, IS-200. Then there's 2 more. Introduction to the National Incident Command System. Again, explaining where this came from and why we do this. And the last one is the National Response Framework and Introduction. NIMS, National Incident Management System. These 4 classes, and I'll show links here in a minute, but they're self-study. But I'm going to offer the club and anybody who wants, we're going to do some classes on these. That you can do these as self-study. There's class that you can look online, take some tests, and you can get a little certificate printed out. That certificate printed out is what you'll need down the road, especially if you're going to operate on emergency scenes or you're going to operate with served agencies. They're taken online, self-study, average on 1 to 2 hours to complete. They're not terribly complicated. I don't want you to think for a minute that just, oh my God, it's not terribly complicated. We start here, we flow down. We start here, we flow up. There's a constant communication going back and forth. So don't be afraid of it, but these are the 4. For those of you that don't want to do it, or we may do some training classes outside of here, I'd be more than happy to sit with you, anybody, and help you review those. There's many classes. There's got to be hundreds of those classes out there, but those are the 4 that you really need. I said BVRC will host a brief overview of some of these training classes soon. This is an offer, and this is part of one of my plans, is to offer something that exposes EmComm operators to these 4 classes to get them to pass those tests as quick as possible. And you do them on your own, but you can sit there and we can ask questions, we can review it. I've taken firefighters, actually, because firefighters are required to do this. A lot of police officers are required to do this. A lot of people are required to do this. So sat with them where we've opened the test up and we've reviewed it together. The government doesn't care. It's not cheating. They want you to be familiar with this operation so you can do it. So we're not cheating the system. What we're trying to do is get you into the system so you can function there. More training. So, and again, these links here, I'll put in the PowerPoint, I'll share them with you, we'll email them out. And that way you've got them so you can review them. But there's a couple on here. So what you do is you register at the FEMA, that's Emergency Management Institute student portal. And if you just look up FEMA EMI, it's going to take you right there. So you go to and you sign up, and you have to get a student number. And it will give you those classes. You can search for them, IS 100. Boop, there it is. Register. It sends you a couple links back and forth. You take the class, you get a little piece of paper to print out and put it in your wallet. There's a couple other ones that I've learned over my time doing this that are really good. Kentucky Aries. They actually have an outstanding online self-study course. Actually, there's quite a few Aries groups that I've met over the years that actually require their members to take this course. It's that good. And it doesn't cost anything. And it's an online class. You'll go through the class. There's a little test at the end. And somebody that works or serves for Kentucky Aries reviews it, and they actually send you a certificate that you passed. But it really is quite decent and really gets into the meat and potatoes of stuff. The other option is the ARRL EC001 self-study course. I have not actually taken that one yet, embarrassingly. I just haven't. And they used to charge for it, and I don't know if they still do or not. Some people, they swear by it, but we were always going for the Kentucky Aries one, so that's what we used. And then the EmComm classes will be, when they become available, we're going to be offered to everybody. And that's going to be offered to the club. We're going to offer it to as many people as we can get in these courses. Obviously, we're not going to do 300, 400 people in one sitting. We'll have to cut them into pieces. But the goal is to get as many people in Northwest Arkansas with that piece of paper under them as possible. Yes, sir.
Can they check? I took that stuff a long time ago, and I don't have any of the paperwork. But can they go back and see where you've taken those?
I don't. It depends, because when I first started taking those, it was like right after 9/11. And you'd sign up, take the course, and they'd actually mail you the certificate. And it came in like this weird tear-off thing. So the Emergency Management Institute should have a record of what you do. How to get there, I don't know, I'd have to look. But they should have a record. God, I hope they have a record, because if I lose mine. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna remember, I'm gonna go check, because if I can find mine, that means you can find yours.
I think they keep it.
Hold on. Go ahead.
The answer to Tim's question is yes. They do keep your records. For example, we all lose paper. Like you say, they don't even send a certificate now; they send a PDF.
Yep.
Of the certificate. But there is an actual, in a computer database somewhere, there is a list of everything you've taken, and it is kept forever.
And I would think they would, because again, when we first started taking those classes, they'd mail them to you, and they'd be like somebody sends you a check. You'd have to tear the edges off, fold it open, and hey, look at there's my certificate. Now it's here's your cheap PDF printed off on whatever paper. The old ones were neat too. They were actually printed on a really nice cardstock. So I would imagine, like you said, he's answered the question.
I think when you register as a student, I think you can go in there. I think you have like a dashboard where it keeps all of that, and you can reprint them if you need to.
Yeah. So, and that's what's great with the new ones. The new ones I've taken. I think it was 4 years ago was the last time I was in there, and that's when they had the new student portal, and you could see it. Before it was when you just had to take it and they mail it to you.
So in addition to this training, is there continual ed after this?
We'll get there.
Directly?
Yes, we'll get there. It's just, they changed things. And actually, the incident command system hasn't changed all that much, but they've added to it. So, and I'll be honest with you, when I took IS 100 back when they first came out with it, and then I took it again a few years ago, the questions weren't all that much different, but they were there. And it's kind of one of those things that as a group gets together and starts to mature, you should be reviewing it anyways. So the long story short, yes, you should be doing that, but that's part of your ongoing training and your pre-planning. Those courses from the EMI, once you've taken them, you're done. That's it. So they don't make you go back and do them. It's not like a paramedic license or something like that where you have to do continuing ed like every single day for the rest of your life. You can work it. But again, as a group, we should be reviewing that anyways. That way we stay crisp on our skills and we know what we're doing. Pre-planning. What does all this mean? So what you need to do is you need to pre-plan and prepare for an incident before it happens. You may never in your entire ham radio career do anything outside of a bike race. You may be involved in one of the biggest tornadoes to ever hit an area. You may be involved in multiple emergencies. You may be involved in none in your EmComm career. None of it matters. You plan for it. This is where it's at. So what you do is traffic handling and documents. There is an entire volume, which some of you that do the NTS, National Traffic System, there's forms, radiograms. There's ways to pass information from here to here without it getting all messed up. Same thing. There's emergency management documents. There's EmComm documents. There's radiograms. There's things that we can fill out that we send to you, and we send to you, and we send to you. And we use the National Traffic System. We can use that. We can use something locally. So there it is. So we have to learn how to traffic handle properly. We have to learn how to communicate. Coordinated frequency and mode designations. It's another thing. What channels are we going to use? It depends, right? Do we need an NVIS setup so we can just do a short HF hop? Do we need to talk across 3 states to talk to somebody else? Do we just need a 2-meter or a 440 repeater around town? That should already be planned. That already needs to be planned. What frequencies we're going to use, what repeaters we're going to use. Are those repeaters going to be available? Do you have a backup? 2 is 1, 1 is none. I'm really big on that. You should have a backup of everything. If you can have a backup of a backup, that's even better. Instructions and mission from your served agency. You may be asked to just do situational awareness things. A lot of times, you're not going to go run out and we're going to save the world. What we're really looking for is there trees in the street? Yeah, we can find that out. We don't really have to leave our house, some of us. Yeah, I can see some trees left the street. Somebody's listening, they're documenting that. I got power lines down here. Okay, I'm documenting that. We can send this information off here, we can send that information off there. It may be that all the way up to, again, there's a large incident that occurs that there's no communications. And you get called in and you have to provide those. But again, 2 is 1, 1 is none. There it is, it's commitment. So either you do or you don't. There's no in between. There really isn't, not with EmComm. This isn't kind of one of those things that I don't really feel like it. I don't feel like doing it. Then you're not going to. Then you're not going to take the classes. You're not going to do it. You're in it. You commit to it. You get it done. When you stop being committed to it, it's time to stop doing it. And that's okay. It's not, again, EmComm's not for everybody. You know, again, it's like, I'm tired of this Baofeng HT. I don't even know how to say Baofeng. I'm going to go get my HF. And then you make that first contact with somewhere and the magic happens for you and you live on HF for the next 25 years. You might be on HF like, I'm tired of listening to these guys. Oh, look, I just talked, you know, I got my computer going. I'm going to use some FT8. I'm going to do something. It just keeps going. But while we're doing EmComm, we have to be committed to it. So what it gets at is you got to figure out what capacity you're able to commit to and if it aligns with the organization. And then you just volunteer and step up and be part of EmComm. You commit to the training, you take the courses, you ask the questions, and you become educated. And then you participate in the events. And this is where both training and life, and that's where it's at. We can sit and talk about stuff till we're blue in the face when we're you know, doing studies. Now we have to go out in the field and actually do it. This is where, you know, again, we're kind of late to the party, or I'm late to the party, but, you know, simulated emergency tests. Field day is great. Field day is wonderful. Perfect way to do it. Because if you do field day in particular, like an EmComm drill, you're going to see how long it works. You got to bring people bringing in food. You got people bringing in, you know, generator fuel. Can you operate off the grid? Can you operate by yourself? Have you brought enough food to take care of yourself, or does your team prepared enough to take care of itself for 3 or 4 days? There has been times where even in my own career, I have responded to fires or, you know, whatnot that we had to have food brought in. That's where those logistics comes in. There was no food, there's no facilities, there's no, I have nothing. I have barely any clothes with me. You know, as an emergency communicator, you're probably going to be coming in a little bit later in the program, so you have time to have a go bag, go kits. I know some of you talked and heard about go kits. There's multiple levels of that, which I want to get into a little bit down the road. But you got to prepare your body and your mind to be familiar with your mental and physical capabilities. Not every EmComm person is a responder. And what that means is there are EmComm operators that will work from their home. That's all they do, and it's a very valuable resource. There's a lot of times in EmComm facilities that you, as a home ham operator, that's what we need. That's where the situation awareness comes from, the traffic handling. We can do all that from the comfort of our home if it works. So we need everybody. We need those that can go out and actually physically do something. We need somebody that can stay at home and run nets, run relays, communications that way. So it's for everybody. And then just have a genuine desire to serve without politics, without self, and just be a volunteer. I have no interest in club politics. I have no interest in any of that stuff when it comes to EmComm. When we're doing emergency communications in the true fashion it is, we're there to communicate. We're there to take this message and get it over here. Period. That's what we're here for. So what's an EmComm environment like? There have been quite a bit of emergency responses over the years where ham radio operators have done stuff in some dangerous and bad situations. Your goal after your safety is to pass messages from their intended recipients as clearly and quickly as possible with no errors. It's your job. That's what we're doing. We're communicators. We're here to communicate. And we use whatever means necessary, right? When all else fails. So that's what our goal is. But I notice how I put after your safety in there. It's important. You come first. I know that's bad. We want to be, you know, heroes and selfless. You know, like for me, firefighters and police officers stuff. You know, we could do it we get paid for that. But even in those classes, even when I was training to be an EMT, I was training to be a firefighter, I was training to be this, safety, 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 safety first. Your safety, because you can't help anybody when you're hurt. We're no different. So after your safety. You may be asked to deploy communications equipment in a dangerous environment that you aren't familiar with. That right there is a problem. Things look different during the day versus the night, don't they? So, and you may be asked to go somewhere you've never been before. You get there and they say, well, get your radio going. There's trees everywhere. Oh my gosh. You have to be able to function at those levels. You have to be able to deploy and figure out what you can do. Safety is paramount. Again, safety. In unforgiving, poor conditions. The rain's going this way. The wind's going this way. You're going this way. So we have to keep that in mind. You will most likely have to take care of yourself for the first parts of the incident or longer. I am going to do, as part of these trainings, is some go kits. A 72-hour go kit, a 1-week go kit, a 24-hour go kit. Between those three, you should have it covered. If you can eat something for more than a week, we have bigger fish to fry. So most, that's not all, but most fire departments, police departments, things like that will bring up that logistics sector. That's where food comes in, clothes, rest, rehabilitation. You have to be part of that. So be ready. And that's where that environment is. It's not all sunny and 70 degrees every day. As a EmComm operator, most of these clubs, they have like those vans, like we talked about. People are getting vans, they're getting trailers, they're getting some sort of equipment to operate in, some sort of shelter, a push-up tent. It all helps. It keeps you out of the rain. But isn't EmComm dying? Not necessarily. Public safety agencies have learned from hams over the years because many of us did both. We actually helped patch the holes. The fire service, the police service, the ambulance service are the only 3 jobs I've ever heard of in my life that actively attempt to put themselves out of business. You ask a firefighter, you ask a police officer, they want less crime, they want less fires. They are the only people I've ever met and to this day that intentionally try to put themselves out of business. Fortunately or unfortunately, how you look at it, it doesn't work that way, but that's what they do. Because of that, firefighters, police departments, public safety agencies, a lot of us that were hams. We learned our ham skills and we figured out how to plug those holes. We built mobile command posts. Cell phone companies built their own towers on wheels, cows. They've built fortified structures. They've put generators on. They've figured out what they could do to keep their communication systems up and running as much as possible. DC power plant cell, all this stuff. Ham radios. So where's your ham radio repeater located? Sometimes they're on the same tower as the counties. All right. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you have a space somewhere else that when theirs goes down, yours doesn't go down also? So those is where the logistics comes in. Sometimes it doesn't work that way sometimes. But as a ham, you can set something up portable a lot faster. You can get equipment and communications going a lot faster than they can. This is days. This is days before this stuff shows up. This is days before this shows up. You can do it in hours. And you have the skill sets as a ham operator to build a communication system, a robust one, very quickly. And as you get into the more EmComm stuff, where you start learning about wire antennas a little bit more, off-center fed dipoles. Those of you that do HF, it's great. I can take a wire, throw it in a tree, tune it up, talk to Africa. Right? Done it, if the band's open. But I had to throw it in there if the band's open. But you can do some NVIS work, the near vertical incident skywave, where it kind of sets the signal up and drops it a little bit closer. You can do ground wave communication, where it just kind of crawls along the ground and gets within 40, 50 miles. You have multiple frequencies and opportunities at your fingertips as a ham operator to get a communication system up really, really fast. And that's what makes us valuable. We got to adapt and fill in the gaps when all else fails. If you're expecting as an EmComm operator that you're going to be out every week, every month, saving the world, no. Again, most of us, or most of, it won't happen in your entire career. Others, it might happen several times. We don't know. So we just prepare for it and hope it doesn't happen, but be prepared for it. And that's the best we can do. We got to be ready and willing to work outside of the box. So here's some of the next steps I want to do for our club and for the area in general. The Aries side of things has asked me to set up and work with the emergency coordinators in Northwest Arkansas. There's some areas that need new ECs. There's some that need to be updated. So we're going to be working through that on the Aries side. I'm going to reach out and talk to some local governments, just introduce myself, and we're going to make an active roster. Tom and the crew were saying that there was a list you checked off on your application that you were interested in EmComm. I'm going to ask for those. Some of you have already sent me an email. I've been keeping those. So once that active list gets up, I want to start talking to you through the club for now on what we're going to do as far as training, because that's what we need to do, and that's what needs to be done as a club. A lot of you have been doing this a long time. You've been to 1 million bike races. You've been to 1 million runs. You've done EmComm in your past. If we all get on the same page and we all get the training and it's all there, then everything else kind of falls into place. There is a lot of things that can get done quicker if we kind of get that roster put together, but we have an excellent resource in this part of the state. It's ripe for it. So I'm really looking forward to this. And the next is to begin the process for NIMS and ICS compliance. We're going to do this training. You can do it on self-study. We can host some classes. I have no problem doing either or. And we're going to start putting a list of that together. There's going to be a lot of EmComm groups will put together a list of what are you capable of. If you're a technician with a Baofeng, you are no less or more useful than the person with the $1 million HF setup. There is absolutely a need for both of you. So don't be afraid. If this is something that it might interest you, and don't be afraid to try. I would rather you try and decide later you didn't like it than wonder and not try, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is so great. You try. All you have to be is attack.
Just to illustrate that point, of the approximately 8,700 licensees in the state of Arkansas, over 6,000 of them are technicians.
Yep. So if you have, now we're going to walk on that a little bit. Can a group of 15 technicians be an EmComm group? Yeah, they can. Because if they're smart, one of them's going to get a general. And if they don't want to do that, they're going to find somebody to get a general. But you can still do things as an EmComm group with just technicians. How hard is it to build a repeater? Not a word. It takes some technical. It takes some technical skill. It's not easy. The idea is there, but it's not easy. There's a lot of technical skill to it. It takes equipment. It takes time, right? Somebody might be like, oh, I can have a repeater on the air in an hour. Yeah, we can. But you have a technical skill set that you've taken over the course of years to get there. It's a skill. So let's say we have 5 Tens and Johns. Oh, man, we're going to get some repeaters up. They build ones from here to the end of the state. You are very valuable now, right? So as a technician, you're no better or worse than a general or an extra. It doesn't matter. There's a place for everybody. Next step, we're going to reach out to government agencies, other ham groups, and start an MOU process. What is an MOU? It is a Memorandum of Understanding. And what that is pretty much the golden document that an Aries or ACES group has with a served agency. It outlines what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. They can be very brief, 1 pages, and some of the ones we had in Colorado were 10. They're out there. So that process takes a little time. You have to talk to the right people, and you have to tell them what you got. There's other groups in the state that have these, so you have to work with those groups too. again, that's that unified command, mutual aid, work together thing. So, classes on training on go kits, traffic handling, net control, and preparedness. We're not going to get anywhere as an EmComm group or as a club or as any organization if we don't practice. And we have to learn. Some people know this stuff. You know, I don't have to teach all of them. I'm sure there's probably there's probably people in here, I guarantee you there's people here that are a lot better at traffic handling than me. They're more skilled at it. Everybody has a strength, and you take those strengths and you apply them. All right? I can run a net. I can run several nets. I can run, you know, whatever. But I don't have to be me. This person, this person, this person, this person. Everybody needs to be able to do it. So that way when an incident happens and 5 people show up, out of that 5 people can do that. We share, we train. Discussion of areas, races, groups, establishment, and where does the club fit in? That's something we'll have to cross down the road. I am a firm believer that areas and races is a thing. It is something that needs to be taken seriously. It's something that's taken important. It is something that has its own organization because of all of this stuff. But down the road, we can talk about that later. And then we're going to establish some coordinators and points of contact. It's going to take more than just me. I'm really hoping there's a bunch of you in here that are really interested in doing this. I look forward to talking to you a little bit more about it. I'm going to leave my phone number up here on the board if I'm allowed to for a couple minutes. If you want it, you can email me, you can call me, we can discuss it. I like this stuff. This stuff is fun. I'm always open to ideas too. What we did 5 years ago might be different than today. What we did 10 years ago might be different than what we do today. What we did in this area might work better in this area. So it has to be a collective movement. So those are the big things we got to do. There's some training involved, and those that you want to do it, it's time to get going. We talked a little bit about this before, and I promise we're almost done. There is never any self-activation. They don't show up anywhere without being told to do so by agency coordinators. And when I say agency coordinators, it might be your served agency or it might be the club. Skywarn activation. You know, Skywarn gets activated by the National Weather Service. They might be like, say, spotter, you know, they have a spotter statement at the end of each thing. You might be needed, you will be needed. They're going to call. The coordinators of Skywarn groups all over the country, right, will decide using that information of how, correct me if I'm wrong, how we're going to activate that and get those spotters out in the field. We don't do it until we're told to. There's always room for both volunteers who can respond to a place when officially activated or work from their homes and home shacks. This is the beauty of ham radio. You must know what you're capable of. So again, you may not be the ham operator that's going to be jumping in the car to go out to the field to help. You may be working from your home. That's just as important as those that do. Be prepared. This is going to be including for your own well-being and where go kits come into play. There's a lot of time you get to a place, you're stuck there for 12 hours. You're stuck there for a day. You've got 2 people and you're doing shifts back and forth. The wildfires in Arizona for, you know, California. There's no power. There's no escape. There's fire coming all over the place. You have to be prepared. It's where those kits come from. We're going to get into those. And I think we were doing classes. You were doing a class kind of with some new hams a few months ago where you were showing kind of like a go kit of radios, right? Yeah, a little Club Go box. Those are great, and it's if you can afford it. Not, you know, and I just preface this that way, but if you can afford to have something that's in a Pelican case or it's in a box, it's ready to go. It's a true go kit. And you get that phone call, hey Chris, we need you to come out and help with whatever. Off I go. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you're like, oh, where's my super suit? You know, got to find your stuff. But you want to have as much of that gear rounded up. Radio equipment, food, clothing. There's nothing worse than it's 70 degrees outside and you show up somewhere and that storm comes through and it's 5. I mean, we all live in Arkansas. We know how that works, right? So that in and of itself is its own thing. And then test, practice, and participate to build muscle memory and be able to work under pressure. Can you do it in the dark? Can you do it with your eyes closed? You know, it's difficult at best to operate a radio in the dark. But a lot of you have done it, I imagine. You're in a car at night trying to, you know, not supposed to. But if you did, it's a pain. But what do you do in a low light situation and you need to get your radio fired up? You know, do we all have a phone with a flashlight on it? Do we have a flashlight? You know, have those things with you. Be able to, there you go. You know, be able to be like, no, I got light covered. You know, and then got that going. Did you bring a charger for it? Do you have a way to charge it? These things all happen. How long do you think you'd survive a zombie apocalypse? So that's pretty much all I had for today. Again, I wanted it to be an entry-level, basic, those of you that are new to ham radio and EmComm, this is the first time you've ever really seen anything about it. I wanted you to see what it is. From here on out, we'll start taking the next steps and we'll kind of start to build on this and we'll do some classes. Again, and I'll talk to Tom and the board and figure out, okay, what days can I offer? And those of you that are interested, obviously we have some skill sets in here. There's some people in here with a lot of deep skill in this kind of stuff. You know, where can you come and help and get us to move into this direction? And where can I get help to, I don't understand this ICS thing. I don't understand what logistics is versus this and that. That's where we can do it. Again, the government wants you to function in those levels. They don't care how you get there. So if we have a bunch of laptops, and I'm not going to tell you the answers, but we're going to learn them together, and you pass it, and you get that nice little piece of paper, we move on. Once you've exposed to it, then we can train on it. So questions, comments, concerns, complaints?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Yesterday there was a drill. You aware of that?
The simulated emergency test? I was.
J.M. Rowe was ecstatic. Do you know?
So what happened? Yeah. So what happened is usually every fall they have something called Aries does something called a simulated emergency test, and what that is for a very brief period of time, we simulate an emergency. These are groups that they're already established, they're already ready to go, and what he did was 6,000 technicians in Arkansas. And then you have the HF net, the Razorback net, which obviously the remaining 2,000 or 3,000 are hams. Of that 3,000, how many are actually interested in EmComm? Let's say a third. A third was enough. So what they did for that test in central Arkansas and in some of these other areas was report something in your neighborhood, relay it to a repeater, a neighborhood repeater, your system repeater, and somebody in that area take that information from HF and pass it up to the Razorback net. And there was a massive response to it. So there was a massive response from the technician level people. Luckily, there was HF operators that would take that information from the nets, but there was an awful lot of technician level, entry level people that participated, and it was a very, very big success.
And he's got that to show the served agencies.
Exactly.
Which is really great.
Yeah, I actually participated in that yesterday. I was on my way down to Hot Springs, and so I was just switching repeaters as I was going down I-40 and hit the Polk County net and the Faulkner County net on the way down. And I mean, they had people checking in. I mean, it was call sign after call sign after call sign. They were only going about 30 minutes.
Yep.
I think is what they were doing.
Yeah, it was a 30 minutes.
From 5:30 to 6 o'clock.
So what it was, and it was designed to be like, okay, we're going to send this out. You only have this amount of time. And there was a huge response to it. And unfortunately, we didn't get that far up here. But we do this set every year. And then they'll do a winter field day, spring field day. They may do a spring set and a fall set. And most Aries groups and districts will do their own. So we will probably do one of those here shortly. What it does is it stresses and tests the infrastructure. It tests and stresses your equipment, your access to equipment. It also tests the repeater system or whatever equipment that you're using to relay. So, and by the way, John, thank you for offering to help with this, with the radio stuff. So I appreciate it. It means a lot to me.
For some reason, I always join this club and some other ones. People always talk about, well, I always disconnect my antenna and everything when the storm comes around. Well, obviously you can't do that during emergencies while you're covering it. What is it that EmComm does differently to prevent or at least minimize some kind of lightning problems or whatever else might come up?
All right, so the question more or less that he's asking is, there's people that will disconnect their antennas and kind of bow out when a storm comes through, and what do you do to avoid that? I'm going to go back to the safety. If you think your safety's in jeopardy and your equipment's in jeopardy, you unplug it until it comes past, and then you plug it back in and get to work. It's really what it is. You can take it to a whole nother level and improve your grounding and do that, but it's electronics with metal in the air that lightning seems to like. I don't know about you, but I like EmComm and stuff, but if there's a massive storm right over the top of my house, I'm really not going to be touching things that are electric. So what do we do different? Nothing. It's your safety comes first. If you have no equipment, because it's all been nuked by a lightning bolt, you won't be, that's kind of what it is. But again, nothing we do is first response level. It's very rare, if ever, that there's ever going to be anything at a first response level. We are not first responders. So turn it off, stay safe, deal with it after it clears. That's my opinion. If anybody has got a different one, I'll be all ears, but I think that's pretty much standard.
Becky could use a handy talkie if you're able to hit their repeaters.
Sure. Yeah, you could use a handy talkie, something that's not outside. Absolutely. And again, the repeaters that are here in Northwest Arkansas are in good spots. They're on good towers. They're built to decent standards. They're professional engineering standards. They're grounded. They still get hit by lightning. They still let out the magic smoke. So me as I own several repeaters. They're GMRS repeaters. I have some ham repeaters sitting there waiting. They get hit by lightning. And we just have to change them. So 2 is 1, 1 is none. And sometimes it's really bad when you have to replace something that you didn't want to, but it happens. Tell me I'm wrong. Anything else? Questions? Yeah.
Just a little bit off subject, but not. I moved here 6 years ago from Central Illinois. For 30 years, I took the storm spotter training. And when a storm hit, we got called out, and we were all over Peoria County, several other counties, out to the edges, out to the fringes, watching the skies. Mm-hmm. I just assumed that was everywhere.
No.
I was kind of shocked that I'm not able to find anything down here like that.
So I'm not going to talk. There are groups that are trying to build up to that.
Okay.
And there are groups that are formulating, and this is what we're doing here. Is we're trying to create a group of people that are willing to go do stuff like that. They have to have the training, they have to have the skill sets, they have to have the activation, and somebody has to tell them the wherewithal of where to go. There is the NWA Skywarn group. There is, you send a message to the NWA Skywarn group, and that's a group they could do. There's NWA EmComm that's here that does some stuff. There's our club that does some stuff. Hopefully, we'll all kind of get on the same picture.
We had one net control that went to the airport in Peoria where the National Weather Service has, and he had a station there ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then and it was a controlled net. We would call in, and I called in a few tornadoes myself. As they're spinning up. It's a little spooky when you look straight up.
Yeah, they're the NWA Skywarn, and that's what that what is it, WX5 NAS? There is a group here that does that, and we have to get with them too. And then there's our group that will get with them and get with the others. But yeah, they'll do that. Yeah.
Can I add a comment to that?
Absolutely.
So just briefly, I'm not going to talk on behalf of all of Northwest Arkansas Skywarn, but just briefly, part of our training, we would like you to take your ICS 100 and 200 that are on here, which are not hard. I know it seems really scary. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, they're not.
And we have a few online programs we'd like you to do weather. Most of those, well, anyway. We do this because we do want to send spotters out in the field, and we do have a lot of a few dedicated spotters who will go out in the field during a storm. And we have a shared Google map of dedicated positions. So if we lose radio contact, like say we have one guy who goes out to XNA. If we lose contact with him for whatever reason, and he said he was at XNA, we know to go check at that spot if we have to, if something bad happens. A good point of that is last spring, it was 11 o'clock at night, and we had a thunderstorm that was producing 3 tornadoes across northwest Arkansas. I want to say this was the storm that caused a lot of damage in Springdale, took out the tower down by the mall.
Yep.
We had an amateur get on the air and said, yeah, it's hailing in this town. Like, okay, that's nice. I appreciate your enthusiasm. I'm glad somebody's on the radio at 11 o'clock at night. But you start to become a little bit of a liability, not just for yourself getting out there and doing stuff, but you're kind of burning up airtime when somebody could be in real trouble. So that's why we highly encourage, if you want to get with me, I can get you all that information to get you set up. But training is a requirement for our Skyward, just because, we take safety seriously. Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Another good thing for that, if you're wanting to keep track of your people, is APRS.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That alone is like a huge thing. And I used to have digipeters and stuff up, and I bought some stuff. It's coming, so I will have APRS again. I bought a lot of things lately that are coming. So, but at any rate, it's a lot of fun. And as we work this out and we work this as a club together, a lot of these issues will come up. Any other questions? Yes.
Let's say hypothetically that someone, a member of the club, was not necessarily a resident of Benton or Washington County. I don't know, Sebastian.
So, you two in particular, and the reason I'm going to point at you because I hear you're from Fort Smith, right?
Yes.
So my Aries assignment actually covers all the way down to Waldron.
Oh, perfect.
So, and it goes all the way just about to, through Boone County, down to Pope County. It's about 9 counties. It, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, is the same, more or less, DMA my TV station operates in, so it's quite convenient for me. But that being said, locally for you, if you can't get into the equipment, whatever we decide to use up here, which knowing what I know is not going to be an issue much longer, there are groups down there that you would operate with also.
There's an Aries group, yeah.
Yeah, so as an Aries guy, I'm interested in setting these groups up all over the place. So even if you're a club here and you're in this club, if there's something here that's doing EmComm that you're interested in, please by all means reach out to them and help.
Okay, I just don't know what kind of training, if any at all, they offer.
And because I literally was appointed late last week, I don't either. This is part of my mission, is to reach out to those Aries clubs, get introduced to them, have those quid pro quos, go to their meetings, once in a while, and touch base with them. So we're all doing the same thing. Because if we're doing this right, this group, all in Northwest Arkansas are doing the same thing to the same result, to the same goal. That you could literally operate here in Bella Vista or Fort Smith, doesn't matter. It's the same, we're doing the same thing. So that's the goal. And I think we'll get there. Anything else? I appreciate y'all listening to me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom.